My name is Kathy, and this is the story of how my life took an unexpected turn. I met my husband, Mark, 5 years ago when we were both fresh out of college. Mark was a kind-hearted and hardworking man, despite his job as a regular office worker that didn't earn much. We were instantly drawn to each other, and our love blossomed quickly. One sunny afternoon, while strolling through the park, Mark and I sat down on a bench, enjoying the gentle breeze that rustled through the trees. We opened up about our dreams and aspirations, and it was then that Mark revealed his desire to provide a comfortable life for the both of us, despite his limited income. "I know I don't make much money, Kathy," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "but I promise to work hard and make our future together the best it can be." His words melted my heart, and I knew that material wealth was not the most important thing in life. We shared a love that transcended financial boundaries, and I was ready to embark on this journey with him. As our relationship grew, I introduced Mark to my mother, Margaret, who played a significant role in our lives. She had retired from her teaching career a few years back and received a comfortable pension. Margaret had always been supportive of me and wanted nothing but happiness for her daughter. One evening, over a home-cooked dinner at our cozy apartment, Mark and I discussed our financial struggles. He looked at me with a mixture of determination and love. "Kathy, I want to give you the world," he said, reaching out to hold my hand. "But for now, we need to make do with what we have. I promise, one day, I'll provide everything you deserve." His words reassured me that our love was enough to sustain us through any challenges that lay ahead. We were a team, and together we could conquer the world. Margaret, being aware of our financial situation, often offered her assistance when we needed it most. She would lovingly hand me an envelope filled with money, assuring me that it was her way of taking care of us. "I want you to be happy, my dear," she would say, her eyes filled with maternal warmth. "Use this money wisely and remember that your mother loves you." Her generosity touched my heart, and I was grateful for her support. It wasn't just about the financial help. It was the love and care she poured into every gesture. Margaret's presence in our lives was a reminder that family is always there to lend a helping hand. And so, with Mark's unwavering determination and Margaret's support, we began our life together, embracing the challenges that lay ahead. Little did I know that our journey would take an unexpected turn, shattering the tranquility we had found. But as I reflect on those early days, I cherish the love and hope that guided us, for it was the foundation of the strength we would need in the chapters that followed. My mother, Margaret, played a significant role in our lives, especially when it came to financial matters. She had retired from her career as a beloved school teacher, and her pension provided her with a comfortable income. Margaret was a beacon of love and support, always ready to lend a helping hand to those she cared about. One sunny afternoon, I sat with my mother in her cozy living room, sipping on a cup of tea. The warm glow of the afternoon sun bathed the room, creating an atmosphere of comfort and tranquility. I decided it was time to confide in her about our financial struggles. "Mom, Mark and I have been trying our best to make ends meet," I said, my voice tinged with a hint of worry. "His job doesn't pay much, and sometimes it feels overwhelming." Margaret reached out and gently squeezed my hand. Her eyes filled with a mix of compassion and, "My dear Kathy, life is filled with ups and downs," she said, her voice soothing. "Remember, your father and I faced similar challenges when we were starting out. We'll get through this together." Her words brought me solace, reminding me of the resilience that runs in our family. Margaret had always been a pillar of strength, and she had weathered her fair share of storms. I felt a renewed sense of hope. As the months passed, Margaret's support became even more evident. She would often surprise us with small gestures of kindness, like leaving a carefully wrapped package on our doorstep or slipping an envelope of money into my purse when she thought I wasn't looking. Her actions were filled with love, and it was clear that she wanted nothing but the best for us. One evening, as Mark and I sat around the dining table trying to figure out how to pay our bills, I decided to share the extent of my mother's generosity. "Mark, there's something I need to tell you," I began, my voice laced with both gratitude and concern. "My mother has been helping us financially. Her pension has been a lifeline for us." Mark looked at me, a mix of surprise and gratitude in his eyes. "Kathy, your mother is amazing. I never realized the extent of her support. We're truly fortunate to have her." I nodded, my heart swelling with love for both Mark and my mother. "Yes, we are, and we must never take her kindness for granted. It's a testament to her love for us." Mark and I were grateful for Margaret's support, both emotionally and financially. Her pension eased our financial burden and allowed us to focus on building a life together. We knew that her generosity came from a place of pure love and concern for our well-being. As we navigated the complexities of our early married life, Margaret's presence and assistance provided us with the strength to face any challenges that came our way. Her unwavering love was a constant reminder that family bonds can transcend any hardship, and we were truly blessed to have her in our lives. Life had been relatively stable and filled with love, thanks to the support of my husband Mark and the generosity of my mother Margaret. However, one fateful day, everything came crashing down, shattering the tranquility we had grown accustomed to. I received a frantic phone call from my mother, her voice trembling with distress. She asked me to meet her at our apartment immediately. Worried, I rushed home, my mind racing with countless possibilities of what could have gone wrong. When I arrived, I found my mother standing at the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Her usually composed demeanor was replaced with a raw vulnerability that struck a chord deep within me. Mother, what happened?" I stammered, my voice filled with concern. "Why are you crying?" She took a deep breath, struggling to find the words. "Kathy, your husband, he came to my house today. He took my life savings, kicked me out, and disappeared." Shock coursed through my veins like icy tendrils, leaving me numb. My mind couldn't comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal. How could Mark, the man I loved, commit such an atrocious act against my own mother? Hours passed as I tried to reach Mark, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number repeatedly. Each call went unanswered, amplifying the sense of dread that had settled over me. Where was he? What had he done with the money? The evening wore on, and just as despair threatened to consume me entirely, Mark finally walked through the door. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anger, hurt, and confusion swirling within me. "Why, Mark?" I demanded, my voice choked with emotion. "Why would you do such a terrible thing to my mother? She trusted you." Mark glanced at me nonchalantly, his face devoid of remorse. "Your mother didn't need that money, Kathy. I used it to buy a new car, something we both deserved." I felt a surge of rage rise within me. How could he justify his actions so callously? The man I thought I knew had transformed into a stranger before my very eyes. "This is not about what we deserve, Mark." I spat, my voice laced with anger. "This is about respect, empathy, and the love we owe to our family. You have broken that trust, and I cannot stand by and condone your actions." Tears welled up in my eyes as I made my decision. I knew that I couldn't continue a life with a man who could so callously hurt those closest to us. "I'm leaving, Mark," I declared, my voice steady despite the pain that gnawed at my heart. "I'm going to my mother's house. I will not tolerate such treatment of her, and I refuse to be a part of this betrayal." With resolve in my voice, I gathered my belongings and left, my footsteps heavy with a mix of grief and determination. It was time to stand up for what was right, both for my mother and myself. Little did I know that this would be just the beginning of a journey that would test my strength and resilience. Leaving behind the shattered remnants of the life I had built with Mark, I found solace and refuge in the comforting embrace of my mother's home. It was a place of safety, where I could gather my thoughts and prepare myself for the difficult confrontation that awaited. Turned into weeks as I grappled with a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, and a profound sense of loss. I couldn't understand how the man I had loved could so callously betray not only me but my own mother as well. One evening, as the sun cast a warm glow over the living room, my mother and I sat side by side on the couch, our hearts heavy with the weight of our shared pain. We decided that it was time to confront Mark, to demand answers for his unforgivable actions. With determination etched on my face, I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number. The sound of each ring seemed to echo the uncertainty of our future until finally he answered. "Hello." Mark's voice came through the receiver, his tone guarded. "It's Kathy," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "We need to talk." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Mark responded, "Fine, let's meet at our favorite cafe tomorrow afternoon." As the appointed time drew near, my anxiety intensified. Sitting across from him, I would face the person I once believed was my partner in life, now a stranger who had shattered our trust. The cafe was filled with the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee, but there was an air of tension that hung between us as we sat down at a small table by the window. "Why, Mark?" I asked, my voice filled with a mixture of pain and curiosity. "Why would you do such a thing to my mother? She's done nothing but love and support us." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes avoiding mine. Look, Kathy, I understand it may be hard for you to see things from my perspective, but your mother has more than enough money. I wanted to give us a better life, a life we deserved. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could he justify his actions so callously? The depth of his selfishness and disregard for others astounded me. This isn't about what we deserve. Mark, I countered, my voice filled with a mix of anger and disappointment. This is about empathy, compassion, and respecting the people who care for us. You've crossed a line, and I can't forgive that. Silence hung heavily in the air as Mark finally met my gaze, his eyes reflecting a mix of regret and realization. Kathy, I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I truly regret what I've done. His words felt hollow, devoid of the sincerity that could begin to mend the damage he had caused. It was clear that our paths had diverged, and the person I once thought I knew was nothing more than a shadow of the man I had loved. With a heavy sigh, I rose from my seat, my resolve firm. Mark, I can't continue a life with someone who has shown such little regard for the well-being of the people we love. I filed for divorce, and I will be seeking justice for my mother. I hope you take this time to reflect on your actions. As I walked away from that cafe, leaving behind the shattered remnants of our relationship, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. The truth had been confronted, and though the pain would linger, it was a necessary step towards healing and reclaiming the life that had been torn apart. Little did I know that justice would be served, but it would come at a cost. In the aftermath of the shocking betrayal by my ex-husband Mark, my mother and I were determined to seek justice. We refused to let his actions go unpunished. It was time to take a stand and fight for what was right. With the guidance of a skilled attorney, we prepared our case against Mark. We gathered evidence, documented the financial transactions, and consulted with experts who could testify to the wrongful nature of his actions. The wheels of justice began turning, and we prepared ourselves for the courtroom battle that lay ahead. As the day of the trial approached, my mother and I spent countless hours poring over the details, refining our testimonies, and finding the strength within ourselves to face the painful memories that would be brought to light. In the quiet moments leading up to the trial, my mother turned to me, her eyes filled with determination. Kathy, we've been through so much, but this is our chance to make things right. We won't let him get away with what he did. I nodded, my voice steady as I replied, You're right, Mom. We have to stand up not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has experienced betrayal. We will find justice. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the trial began. Mark, sitting at the defendant's table, wore an air of arrogance that did little to hide the guilt that lingered beneath the surface. The prosecution presented its case, laying out the evidence of Mark's deceitful actions. Witnesses testified to the financial transactions, the sudden change in Mark's lifestyle, and the emotional toll it had taken on my mother and me. Then it was our turn. My mother, composed and resolute, took the stand. Her voice trembled slightly as she recounted the betrayal she had endured. He took advantage of my trust and kindness, she said, her voice filled with a mix of sadness and anger. I never imagined that my own son-in-law would stoop so low, betraying the very family he was meant to protect. As I took the stand, my heart pounded in my chest, but I drew strength from my mother's unwavering support. I spoke of the love and trust we had placed in Mark, only to have it shattered by his greed. He believed that my mother didn't need the money, that he had the right to take it for his own selfish desires. I said, my voice filled with conviction, but financial security is not just about the numbers. It's about respect, empathy, and the bonds of family. Mark's actions were a violation of those principles. The defense attempted to undermine our testimonies, painting a picture of misunderstanding and exaggeration. But the evidence spoke for itself, and the truth could not be ignored. After days of intense legal battles, the moment of judgment arrived. The judge, after careful consideration, delivered the verdict. Mark was found guilty of theft, a crime that carried significant consequences. As the sentence was read, my mother and I exchanged a glance, a mix of relief and satisfaction passing between us. Justice had been served, and we had successfully defended our honor and the honor of our family. Outside the courtroom, my mother and I stood side by side, a united front against the storm we had weathered. Tears of both joy and sorrow mingled as we embraced, knowing that we had come out stronger on the other side. Mom, I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. We did it. We stood up for what was right, and we found. She smiled through her tears, a glimmer of pride shining in her eyes. Yes, Kathy, we did. We reclaimed our dignity and sent a message that betrayal will not go unpunished. Our journey may have been painful, but it was worth it. Together, we walked away from the courtroom, leaving behind the echoes of our battle. Though scars remained, we knew that we had taken a stand, proving that even in the face of the deepest betrayal, strength and resilience could prevail. In the wake of our successful civil lawsuit against Mark, my mother and I were finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. The weight of betrayal began to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of empowerment and closure. It was a chapter in our lives that had been marked by pain and deception, but now we could turn the page with a renewed sense of hope. With the compensation we received, my mother and I made the decision to use the funds to start afresh. We moved into a new home, one that symbolized our liberation from the past and the beginning of a brighter future. Together, we embarked on a journey of healing and rebuilding, determined to leave behind the scars of betrayal. As the months passed, life slowly regained a sense of normalcy. My mother's strength and resilience became an inspiration to me, and I marveled at her ability to find joy amidst the wreckage that had once defined our lives. We forged new bonds and surrounded ourselves with love and support. One evening, while sitting in our cozy living room, my mother turned to me with a twinkle in her eye. "Kathy, do you remember the days when justice seemed so far out of reach? We've come a long way." I smiled, gratitude filling my heart. "Yes, Mom, we have. We've proven that no matter the odds, justice can prevail." Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of the doorbell. I rose from my seat and answered it, finding our attorney standing on the other side. "Good evening, Kathy, Mrs. Williams." He greeted us warmly. "I have news to share. Mark has filed an appeal against the court's decision in the civil lawsuit." My mother's eyes narrowed, a steely determination returning to her gaze. "We won't let him overturn justice. We will fight this appeal with everything we have." As our attorney nodded in agreement. "That's the spirit. We have a strong case, and I believe the courts will uphold the previous verdict. We won't let him escape the consequences of his actions." This turned into weeks, and the appeal process began. It was a grueling battle, with Mark's defense team trying every tactic to undermine our case. But our resolve remained unshaken, fueled by the belief that justice would prevail once again. Finally, the day of the appeal verdict arrived. As my mother and I sat in the courtroom, tension hung in the air, mingling with our hopes and fears. The judge entered the room, and all eyes turned to him. After careful consideration, the judge delivered the verdict. He affirmed the previous court's decision, rejecting Mark's appeal and upholding the judgment against him. Justice had prevailed once more. Relief washed over us, mingled with a sense of triumph. We had overcome every hurdle, weathered every storm, and emerged victorious. The weight that had burdened our hearts for so long was finally lifted. Outside the courtroom, my mother and I stood together, the wind brushing against our faces. Tears of both joy and closure streamed down our cheeks. "We did it, Mom," I whispered, my voice filled with pride. "Justice has prevailed, and we can finally move forward." She smiled, a radiant expression of triumph. "Yes, Kathy, we have shown that the power of truth and resilience can triumph over deceit. We have reclaimed our lives." As we walked away from the courthouse, hand in hand, we knew that our journey was far from over. But with justice on our side, we had gained not only a sense of closure, but also the strength to face whatever lay ahead. Together, we embraced the future, ready to embrace the joys and challenges that life had in store. The scars of betrayal would always be a part of our story, but they would no longer define us. We had emerged from the darkness, stronger and more determined than ever before. And as we walked into the sunset, I knew that our story of resilience, justice, and the power of a mother's love would inspire others to stand up for what is right, to believe in the strength of their own voice, and to never